Okay, so this is the daf for Wednesday, February 19th, 2025. We are in Sanhedrin 64. So backing up to 63. And this section is going to talk a lot about idol worship again, and there's going to be some specifics as far as the worship of Molech. So anyway, Elijah said to the child, this is the end of 63. From which family are you? The child said to him, I am from such and such a family. Elijah said to him, isn't there anyone left from that family? And the child said to him, no, no one is left besides me. Elijah said to him, if I teach you something through which you will live, will you learn it? And the child said to him, yes. Elijah said to him, say every day, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. So, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Deuteronomy 6:4. So the child said to him, hush, so as not to mention the name of the Lord. See Amos 6:10. The child did not want to even hear the mention of the name of the Lord, which his father and mother did not teach him. Immediately the child removed his God from his bosom and began hugging it and kissing it, until his stomach burst from hunger, and his God fell to the earth, and he fell upon it, in fulfillment of which is stated, quote, and I shall cast your carcasses upon the carcasses of your idols. Leviticus 26, verse 30. This incident demonstrates that the Jewish people engaged in idol worship for its own sake. The Gemara answers, this also occurred after the Jewish people became attached to idol worship. So the Gemara suggests, come and hear, Tashema, come and hear, another proof from the verse, and they cried in a loud voice to the Lord their God. Nehemiah 9, verse 4. What did they say in that prayer? Rav Yehuda says, and some say it was Rav Yonatan, who says, Baya, baya. So, woe, woe. This evil inclination for idol worship is what destroyed the temple and burned the sanctuary and murdered the righteous ones and caused the Jewish people to be exiled from their land. And it still dances among us, or meaning it still affects us. Didn't you give it to us solely for the purpose of our receiving reward for overcoming it? We did not want it, nor do we want its reward. Evidently, the Jewish people were drawn to idol worship itself, and they did not worship idols only in order to engage in forbidden sexual relations. The Gemara answers, this also occurred after the Jewish people became attached to idol worship. The Gemara continues, to relate the story of the prayer in the days of Nehemiah, the people fasted for 3 days and prayed for mercy. In response to their prayer, a note fell for them from heavens, which is written, Emet, or truth, indicating that God accepted their request. So the Gemara makes a parenthetical observation. Rabbi Hanina says, conclude from it that the seal of the Holy One, blessed be He, is truth, or Emet. The form of a fiery lion cub came forth from the chamber of the Holy of Holies. Zechariah the prophet said to the Jewish people, this is the evil inclination for idol worship. When they caught hold of it, one of its hairs fell out, and it let out a shriek of pain that was heard for 400 parasangs. They said, what shall we do to kill it? Perhaps heaven will have mercy upon it if we attempt to kill it, as it will certainly scream even more. And the prophet said to them, throw it into a container made of lead and cover it with lead, as lead absorbs sound, as it is written. And he said, this is the evil one, and he cast it down into the midst of the measure, and he cast a stone of lead upon its opening. Zechariah 5, verse 8. They followed this advice and were freed of the evil inclination for idol worship. When they saw that the evil inclination for idol worship was delivered into their hands, as they requested, the sages said, since it is an auspicious time, let us pray for mercy concerning the evil inclination for sin, concerning sexual matters. They prayed for mercy, and it was also delivered into their hands. The sages imprisoned it for 3 days. At that time, the people searched for a 1-day-old fresh egg for the sick, but did not find one. Since the inclination to reproduce was squashed, the chickens stopped laying eggs. So they said, what should we do? If we pray for half, that is, only half of its power is annulled, nothing will be achieved because heaven does not grant halves, so only whole gifts. So what did they do? They gouged out its eyes, and this was effective in limiting it to the extent that a person is no longer aroused to commit incest with his close relatives. And these are this is kind of like a very mystical story of these creatures coming out of the Holy of Holies. But it's the idea that how idol worship doesn't really have much of a hold on people today, whereas a long time ago people, it says, would pick up their skirt to run after idol worship. They would rush towards it. Okay, so Rav Yehuda says that Rav says an incident occurred involving a certain Gentile woman who was very ill. She said, if that woman, referring to herself, recovers from her illness, she will go and worship every object of idol worship in the world. She recovered from her illness and subsequently worshipped every object of idol worship in the world. When she arrived at Peor, She asked the priest, so that's the idol that its mode of worship is that you defecate in front of it. So how does one worship this idol? She said. They said to her, one eats spinach, which causes diarrhea, and drinks beer, which also causes diarrhea, and defecates before it. The woman said, better for that woman, referring to herself, to return to her illness and not worship an idol in such a manner. So Rav Yehuda says, you, that is the house of Israel, are not like that woman who could not bear the repulsiveness of Baal Peor. It is stated with regard to the attitude of the Jewish people towards idol worship that have attached themselves, Hanitz Madim, to Baal Peor, Numbers 25, verse 5, indicating a tight attachment like a tightly bound cover, Ketsamid Patil, so tied firmly onto a vessel. Yet with regard to the attitude of the Jewish people towards God, it is stated, but you who did cleave, Hadvekim, but you who did cleave to the Lord your God, Deuteronomy 4, verse 4. That is, the connection between the Jewish people and God is like two dates that are lightly attached, hadvukut, to one another, lightly attached, devukut, to one another, but are not tightly pressed together. So this comparison was taught in a Braita, but with the opposite conclusion. It says, quote, that have attached themselves, hanitz madim, to Baal Peor, indicates a connection that is like a bracelet, ketsamid, on a woman's arm, which is worn loosely. But you who did cleave to the Lord your God means that they actually adhered to one another. That is, there was a tight connection. The Gemara relates another incident with regard to Baal Peor. The sages taught there was an incident involving a Jew named Sabata ben Alas, who rented out his donkey and his services to a certain Gentile woman. He was driving his donkey behind her, and when she arrived at Peor, she said to him, wait here until I go in and come out. And after she came out, he said to her, you too wait for me until I go in and come out. And she said to him, aren't you Jewish? Why then are you worshiping idols? He said to her, and what do you care? He entered and defecated before the idol and wiped himself with his nostril, as he wanted to demean the idol as much as possible. But he was unsuccessful, as the priests of Peor were praising him and saying, no person has ever worshipped it before with this excellent form of worship. Although he intended to demean Baal Peor, he actually worshipped it, because that's its manner of worship. All right. So the halacha is that one who defecates before Baal Peor is obligated to bring a sin offering to atone for idol worship, as this is its typical manner of worship, even if he intends to demean the idol. Likewise, one who throws a stone at Mercury is obligated to bring a sin offering to atone for idol worship, as that is its intended form of worship, even if he intends to stone it. So the Gemara relates, Rav Menashe was going to a place called Beit Torta. The people there said to him, there is an object of idol worship situated here in this pile of stones. Rav Menashe picked up a stone and threw it at the idol to demean it. They said to him, it is Mercury, and it is worshipped by throwing stones at it. So Rav Menashe said to them, we learned in the Mishnah that one who throws a stone at Mercury as a manner of worship is liable, whereas I intended to demean it. Rav Menashe went and asked the sages in the study hall whether his interpretation of the Mishnah was correct. They said to him, we learned in the Mishnah that one who throws a stone at Mercury is liable, which implies that he is liable even if he intends to stone it in order to demean it. Rav Menashe said to the sages, if so, I will go and take back the stone I threw. They said to him, both one who removes it and one who places it is liable. In each and every one of the stones taken away from Mercury leaves a place for another stone. So taking a stone away from Mercury provides a place for other stones to be thrown at it. Okay, now we're back to the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, one who gives of his offspring to Molech, for which one is executed by stoning, is not liable unless he hands over his child to the priest of Molech and passes the child through the fire. If he handed over the child to the priest of Molech but did not pass him through the fire, or if he passed him through the fire but did not hand him over to the priest of Molech, he is not liable unless he hands the child over to the priest of Molech and passes him through the fire. Okay, now the Gemara says, the halachot of one's liability for idol worship are taught in the Mishnah above, so 60b, and the halachot of one's liability for the worship of Molech are taught separately in this Mishnah. Therefore, Rabbi Avin says, we learn this Mishnah according to the opinion of one who says that the ritual of Molech is not idol worship, but a form of witchcraft or superstition, as a dispute over this matter is taught in Braita. Both one who transfers his child to the priest of Molech and one who transfers his child for the purpose of worshiping other idols are liable. Molech is cited merely as an example. Rabbi Elazar, son of Rabbi Shimon, says, one who transfers his child to the priest of Molech is liable, but if he transfers him to another object of idol worship, he's not Molech, he's exempt. Abaye says, Rabbi Elazar, son of Rabbi Shimon, and Rabbi Hanina ben Antigonus said the same thing. They said, that is, they share the same halakhic opinion. The statement of Rabbi Elazar, son of Rabbi Shimon, is that which he said, Rabbi Hanina ben Antigonus shares the same opinion. As it is taught in Braita, the Rabbi Hanina ben Antigonus says, for what reason does the Torah use the term Molech? It is to indicate that if one passes his child through the fire in the worship of any object that people enthroned, Shahim Lihukhu, over them as their king, referring to it as Molech. So the word Molech is kind of related to the word for king. So Malach, right? He is liable even if it is merely a pebble or even a toothpick. The Braita indicates that one who passes his child through fire in worship of an item that is not referred to as Molech is not liable, in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Elazar, son of Rabbi Shimon. So Rabbah says, they do not share the same opinion, as there is a practical difference between the opinions in a case of a temporary Molech. According to Rabbi Elazar, son of Rabbi Shimon, one is liable for passing his child through fire only if it is in worship of a permanent Molech, whereas according to Rabbi Hanina ben Antigonus, one is liable for worshiping even a temporary Molech. So Rabbi Yanai says, one is not liable for passing his child through fire to Molech unless he hands him over to the priest of Molech. As it is stated, and you shall not give any of your offspring to pass over to Molech. Leviticus 18:21, which indicates that the prohibition is to give, that is, to hand the child over to the priest. It is also taught in a Braita. One might have thought that one who passed his child through fire but did not hand him over to the priest of Molech should be liable. Therefore, the verse states, you shall not give. If one handed over his son to the priest of Molech but did not pass him through the fire, one might have thought that he should be liable. Therefore, the verse continues to state, to pass, indicating that passing is also necessary. If one handed over the child and passed him through fire, not to priest of Molech, but rather to priest of another object of idol worship, one might have thought that he should be liable. Therefore, the verse states, to Molech. So if one handed over his child and passed him over to the priest of Molech, but did not pass him through the fire, one might have thought that he should be liable. It is stated here in the verse, quote, to pass. And it is stated there in another verse, quote, there shall not be found among you one who passes his son or his daughter through the fire, Deuteronomy 18:10. Just as there the verse is referring to passing one's child through the fire, so to here the reference is to passing one's child through the fire. And just as here the verse is referring to one who passes his child over to the priest of Molech, so to here the reference is to Molech alone, excluding any other object of idol worship. So Rab Achha, son of Rabbah, says, one who passed all of his offspring through the fire to the priest of Molech is exempt, as it is stated, of your offspring, indicating, but not all your offspring. Rab Ashi raises a dilemma. If one passed through the fire a child of his who was blind, what is the halacha? Furthermore, if one passed his child through the fire while the child was asleep, what is the halacha? Does the child need to be capable of passing through on his own, or is that not necessary? Likewise, if one passed his son's son or his daughter's son through the fire, what is the halacha? So a grandchild, right? The Gemara answers, resolve at least one of these dilemmas, as it is taught in Braita. Why must the verse state, because he has given of his offspring to Molech? Leviticus 20, verse 3. What is added by the statement? Because it is stated, there shall not be found among you one who passes his son or his daughter through the fire. I have derived only that it is prohibited for one to pass his son or daughter. From where do I derive that one who passes his son's son or his daughter's son, so a grandchild, is also liable? The verse states, when he gives of his offspring, Leviticus 20, verse 4. The term offspring indicates that grandchildren are included. This resolves one of Rav Ashi's dilemmas. The Gemara asks, the Tana began his exposition with the phrase in the verse, quote, because he has given of his offspring, end of quote, okay, and ended with the interpretation of the phrase in the verse, quote, when he gives of his offspring. So why did he cite two different verses as proof for his halakhic statement? The Gemara answers, the second verse is stated in the Braita for a different exposition, which is omitted from the Braita and reads as follows. From the term in the verse, his offspring, I have derived only that one is liable for passing through the fire his offspring, unflawed lineage. So his descendants from a woman whom he was permitted to marry. From where do I derive that one is liable for passing through the fire his offspring of flawed lineage, through a mamzer or something like that? The verse states, when he gives of his offspring, indicating that one is liable for passing any of his offspring. So Rav Yehuda says, one is not liable for passing his child through the fire to Molech unless he passes him in a typical manner of passing. The Gemara asks, what is considered the typical manner of passing? Abaye says, the child is taken by foot along a lattice work of bricks in the middle, and between the fire on this side and the fire on that side. Rava says, the typical manner of passing is like the leaps of children on Purim. So it is customary to light a bonfire in Purim inside of a pit, and the children would amuse themselves by leaping over the bonfires. Passing one's child over a fire in such a fashion is the typical manner of passing a child over to Molech. So it's just using that example of a child leaping over a pit as an example. It's not saying that exact thing in Purim is Molech worship. So the Gemara comments, it is taught in a Braita in accordance with the opinion of Rava. One is not liable unless he passes his child through fire in the typical manner of passing. If he passed her by foot, he is exempt. Evidently, the passing ritual is performed by leaping and not by walking. So the Braita continues, and one is liable only for passing his descendants. How so? If one passed his son or his daughter through fire, he is liable. If he passed his father or his mother, his brother or sister, he's exempt. If one passed himself over to Molech, he's exempt. And Rabbi Elazar, son of Rabbi Shimon, deems him liable. So, but one who passes his child through fire to Molech, and whenever it's giving Rabbi Elazar, son of Rabbi Shimon, that's the lone opinion there. It's not the majority. Okay, both one who passes his child through the fire to Molech and one who passes his child through fire to other objects of worship, idol worship, are liable. So Rabbi Elazar, son of Rabbi Shimon, says, if he passed him over to Molech, he is liable. If he transfers him to another object of idol worship, not to Molech, he is exempt. So Ula says, what is the reason for the opinion of Rabbi Elazar, son of Rabbi Shimon, who deems one who passes over himself to Molech as liable? The verse states, there shall not be found among you one who passes his son or his daughter through the fire. Deuteronomy 18, verse 10. And the term among you is interpreted homiletically to mean among yourselves, among yourself. So the Gemara asks, and do the rabbis not interpret the term among you as referring to oneself? But didn't we learn in a Mishnah, so Bava Metzia 33a, if one finds his lost item and his father's lost item, if one finds his lost item and his father's lost item, taking care of his own lost item takes precedence. And we said in a discussion of that Mishnah, what is the reason for this? And Rav Yehuda said that it is because the verse states, only so that there shall be no needy among you. Deuteronomy 15, verse 4. Meaning that one must avoid becoming needy. Therefore, if one lost an item, tending to his lost item takes precedence over tending to the lost item of any other person. So apparently this interpretation of the verse is based on the understanding that the term among you is referring to oneself. So one must take care of himself so that he will not become needy. So the Gemara answers, and there, in that discussion, the halacha is derived from the word only, a limiting term, which is interpreted to mean that in preventing destitution, one should begin with himself. So Rabbi Yoshi, son of Rabbi Hanina, says, why is the punishment of excision from the world to come, so karet, mentioned 3 times with regard to idol worship? It is stated twice with regard to the ritual of Molech in the verse, I will also set my face against that man, I will excise him from among his people, Leviticus 20, verse 3. And in the verse it says, then I will set my face against that man and against his family, and I will excise him, Leviticus 20, verse 5. The third mention of karet is with regard to one who blasphemes. Quote, that person blasphemes the Lord, and that soul shall be excised from among his people. Numbers 15, verse 30. One mention is for worshiping an idol in its typical manner of worship, and one mention is for worshiping an idol not in its typical manner of worship. And one mention is for performing the ritual of Molech. So the Gemara asks, and according to the one who says that Molech is an object of idol worship, why do I need a special mention of karet with regard to Molech? The Gemara answers, it is necessary for the case of one who passes his child through the fire to an idol other than Molech, where this is not its typical manner of worship. According to this opinion, one who passes his son through the fire to any idol is liable. Okay, the Gemara asks, and according to one who says that the verse concerning one who blasphemes is regarding to one who engages in idol worship and not to one who curses God, why do I need karet to be mentioned with regard to one who blasphemes? The Gemara answers that it is that it is necessary for that which is taught in a Braita. It is stated with regard to one who blasphemes, because he has despised the word of the Lord and has breached his mitzvah, that soul shall be excised. So, hit karet, tik karet. So, a lot of times the Torah uses two terms side by side that are basically the same. Many times the same. It's just like doubling up the term. It's like a certainty. So his mitzvah. So because he has despised the word of the Lord and has breached his mitzvah, that soul shall be excised. So hit karet, tik karet. His iniquity shall be upon him. Numbers 15:31. The phrase hit karet, tik karet is interpreted as follows. Hikaret, the sinner is excised in this world, meaning that he will die prematurely. Tikaret, the sinner is excised from the world to come, Olam Haba, and he will not merit everlasting life. This is the statement of Rabbi Akiva. So Rabbi Yishmael said to him, but isn't it already stated in the previous verse, he blasphemes the Lord? That soul should be excised. So V'nik Reta, Numbers 15:30. Are there three worlds in which the sinner is excised? Rather, from the term in the verse, V'nik Reta, it is derived that the sinner is excised in this world. From the term Hikaret, it is derived that the sinner is excised in the world to come. And nothing is derived from the doubled verb Hitkaret, Tikkaret, as the Torah spoke in the language of the people. So that is the end of 64.